Some people don't struggle with anger. They struggle with refusal. They can feel overwhelmed, exhausted, resentful, even. And still, they say yes. Not because they truly want to, but because the word no feels dangerous. It feels sharp, disappointing, almost cruel. So instead, they smile softly. They adjust their schedule. They rearrange their priorities. And afterward, alone, they sit with a quiet heaviness. A question that lingers. Why couldn't I just say no? If this feels familiar, you already know the tension. The tightness in your chest before responding. The split second where you consider honesty. And the almost automatic pivot toward accommodation. Because saying no is not just a boundary. For some, it feels like rejection. And rejection feels like loss. People who struggle to say no often appear generous, reliable, helpful, flexible. They are the ones others depend on. The friend who always shows up. The coworker who takes on extra tasks. The family member who mediates conflict. They often anticipate needs before they are voiced. Without realizing it, they monitor the emotional climate around them. If someone sounds stressed, they offer assistance. If someone seems disappointed, they step in to fix it. You may notice that they rarely prioritize their own limits. They often say yes quickly, almost reflexively, even when their schedule is full, even when they are tired, even when something inside them whispers, I don't want to. Later, they may feel drained, not just physically, but emotionally, because every unspoken no becomes a quiet erasure. They often replay conversations afterward. I should have declined. I didn't have time. Why did I agree to that? But in the moment, refusal felt heavier than compliance. They might soften boundaries with phrases like, sure, I'll try. Maybe. I guess I can make it work. Rarely a clear no, because clarity feels confrontational. They may fear being perceived as selfish, difficult, unkind, unreliable. Without realizing it, they link approval with availability. If they are available enough, they will be valued. If they are agreeable enough, they will be kept. Saying no feels like risking connection. And connection feels essential. This pattern rarely begins in adulthood. It often forms in early environments where harmony was fragile. Some children grow up in homes where conflict felt overwhelming. Arguments were loud. Silences were heavy. Emotions were unpredictable. In those spaces, children become attuned. They notice tension quickly. They learn that keeping the peace matters. If saying no once led to anger or withdrawal, they remember. If asserting preferences was met with guilt, they adapt. Perhaps they were told, don't be difficult. Why can't you just cooperate? Stop making things harder. Over time, refusal becomes associated with disruption. The child learns that compliance maintains safety. If love felt conditional, if approval depended on obedience, saying yes became survival. Even subtle emotional reactions can shape this pattern. If a caregiver seemed hurt when the child declined something, the child may internalize responsibility. I caused that disappointment. And so they try to prevent it. They become accommodating, flexible, low maintenance. In some homes, children were praised for being easy. So mature. So understanding. So helpful. These traits are not inherently harmful. But when they are rewarded disproportionately, the child learns something specific. My value increases when I suppress my needs. Over time, the nervous system associates refusal with risk, with rejection, with instability, and so the safest response becomes agreement. As adults, this early conditioning quietly persists. In relationships, they may struggle to express limits. If a partner asks for more time, more effort, more compromise, they often give. Even when something feels off, they may downplay discomfort. It's fine. I can handle it. It's not a big deal. But small concessions accumulate. Unspoken boundaries dissolve slowly. They might feel resentment building, not because they dislike the other person, but because they feel unseen. Yet expressing that resentment feels even more dangerous. At work, the pattern can be equally exhausting. They volunteer when others hesitate. They stay late when others leave. They accept additional responsibilities without pause. Because declining feels like failure or disloyalty. They may fear that saying no will affect how they are perceived, that it will cost them opportunity, respect, security, and so they overextend. Burnout becomes familiar, but even exhaustion feels secondary to maintaining approval. In friendships, similar dynamics appear. They may agree to plans they do not enjoy. They may listen for hours but hesitate to share their own struggles. Because taking up space feels indulgent. Because refusal feels like risking closeness. There is also a subtle inner conflict. Externally, they appear generous, kind, accommodating. People often appreciate them. But internally, they may feel divided. A part of them wants to protect their energy. Another part fears the consequences of doing so. They crave authenticity, yet fear the cost of it. They want to be honest about their limits. But honesty feels sharp, too direct. They may admire people who set boundaries confidently, but struggle to imagine themselves doing the same. Because for them, saying no is not neutral. It is charged. It carries echoes of earlier experiences. Moments when refusal led to tension or disconnection. You might recognize this tension in yourself. The way your body reacts before you respond. The subtle tightening in your stomach. The split second of hesitation. And then the familiar yes. Even when you meant no. The mind may rationalize it afterward. It's not that bad. I can manage. They need me. But somewhere beneath the reasoning, there is fear. Fear of being disliked. Fear of being replaced. Fear of losing belonging. Because for someone who struggles to say no, belonging feels fragile. And availability feels like insurance. Over time, this pattern shapes identity. They begin to see themselves as the dependable one, the supportive one, the accommodating one. These roles feel safe, but they can also feel confining. Because roles leave little room for complexity. They may struggle to identify their own desires. When you constantly prioritize others, your preferences become faint. You may find yourself asking, what do I even want? Resentment can build quietly, not explosive anger, but a slow accumulation of unmet needs. And because those needs were rarely voiced, they remain invisible to others. This invisibility reinforces the pattern. They don't understand me. But understanding requires exposure. And exposure feels risky. The body still remembers that refusal once disrupted stability. So it chooses safety again. Agreement over authenticity. Compliance over conflict. There is a quiet grief in constantly saying yes. Because every yes that betrays yourself is a small loss. A loss of energy, of clarity, of self-trust. When you repeatedly override your own limits, you begin to doubt your instincts. You may feel disconnected from your own signals. Tired, but unable to rest. Overwhelmed, but unable to decline. The paradox is painful. They fear being seen as selfish. Yet they often feel unseen. They fear disappointing others. Yet they live in quiet disappointment of themselves. Externally, they are valued. Internally, they may feel invisible. The most difficult part is that this pattern once made sense. It protected connection. It reduced conflict. It secured belonging. But what once kept you safe may now keep you small. And recognizing that is not betrayal. It is awareness. Saying no is not cruelty. It is clarity. But for someone whose nervous system equates clarity with risk, that shift takes time. Not force. Not dramatic change. Just noticing. Noticing the moments when you automatically agree. Noticing the subtle fear underneath. Not judging it. Understanding it. Because this struggle is not weakness. It is adaptation. A learned response to environments. Where harmony felt fragile. Where love felt conditional. where refusal felt costly. And perhaps the quiet healing begins, not with sudden defiance, but with gentle recognition, with acknowledging that your needs exist, that your limits are real, that your energy is finite. You are not required to earn belonging through exhaustion. You are not responsible for maintaining harmony at the cost of yourself. Saying no does not erase your kindness. It does not negate your care. It simply defines your boundary. And boundaries are not walls. They are edges. Edges that allow connection without disappearance. The fear may still whisper sometimes. Don't upset them. They'll think less of you. You're being selfish. But now you recognize the voice. It is not present danger. It is old memory. And memory does not have to dictate the present. You were never meant to secure love. By erasing yourself, you were never meant to trade authenticity for approval. You were allowed to exist. With preferences. With limits. With no. And perhaps the quietest strength is not in always saying yes, but in trusting that connection can survive your honesty. And if it cannot, then perhaps it was never sustained by your true self to begin with. You do not have to disappear to belong. You do not have to comply to be worthy. And you do not have to sacrifice yourself to stay connected. Sometimes, the simplest word carries the deepest restoration. No, not as rejection, but as recognition. Recognition of your space, your limits, your right to remain whole.